2, 1.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Scrutiny Committee for Housing, Planning and Economic Growth for the 20th of January. The committee today is joined by officers of Democratic Services, Legal Services, Planning and Parking Services. I'm going to conduct a roll call, and we have two or more cabinet members joining us today, and a host of other councillors waiting in the wings who are not being filmed. Councillor Bates, if you can announce yourself as present, please. Councillor Bates. Councillor.
Right, I have unmuted.
Right, Councillor Bates, I can hear you. Councillor Margaret Balsey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Brown.
Present.
Councillor Gunnar White.
Present.
Councillor Pulfer.
Present.
Councillor Eggleston.
Present.
Councillor Hatton.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Henwood.
Present.
Councillor Marsh.
Present.
Councillor Mockford.
Present.
Councillor Peacock.
Present.
Councillor de Bell.
Present.
Councillor Webb.
Present.
Fine, and I'm here. Councillor Walker will not be able to join us for this meeting, so our next task is to actually agree a vice chairman. I'd like to propose Councillor Marsh as the vice chairman for this meeting, and I'd like a show of hands using the button on the right hand side of your screens, please, if you agree with that, please. Thank you. Just to make it very clear, members, we're not using the voting buttons, the yes or no today. I'll explain why in a minute. That's carried. Thank you very much indeed. I'm now going to hand over to Tom Clark, our head of legal services, to explain the workings of our virtual meetings, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
This meeting is being held in accordance with the virtual meeting, public meeting regulations issued by the government at the beginning of April as we got into this pandemic. Members are in charge of their own microphone, as you've seen. The chairman will call members to speak on the one item we have tonight. As the chairman has alluded, the yes/no buttons are not currently working. So he'll be asking for raised hands, but in relation to the main item, I'll be conducting a named vote. So it's quite clear what the outcome is. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Our next task is to note any substitutes. Councillor de Bell is substituting for Councillor Walker and Councillor Pulfer for Councillor Cromie. To receive apologies for absence, there are none. To receive declarations of interest from members, I'll start the ball rolling if I may. I declare it as personal interest and as ward member, a town and district and a town council member. Hayward Heath Town Council. Members, any other declarations, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a declaration. I'm a town councillor member for Franklin's Ward, and I'm also the leader of Hayward Heath Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pulfer.
And likewise, I'm a Hayward Heath Town Councillor and a member of Ashton Ground Ward.
That's lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Any more? Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chairman, not as a member, but I did last time declare that I have a flat within the area of the master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Much appreciated. Thank you. Right, Councillor Henwood, you wish to speak? Thank you.
Sorry, I do not wish to speak at this moment. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much. Okay, sorry. I've just been reminded, sorry about this, that Councillor Cromie and Councillor Walker have actually offered their apologies in advance, which is why we have substitutes, but just to make things correct. Our next task is to confirm the minutes of our last meeting on the 22nd of October. And just a reminder that we will not be using the voting buttons, but a show of hands on the right-hand side of your screens, please. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to be for clarification, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I shan't be commenting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Poulter.
I actually wasn't at the last meeting either,
Thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. That's carried. To the Chairman to consider any items taken as urgent business. I have none. So we move swiftly on to the main item, which is the Haywards Heath Town Centre Master Plan. It's a supplementary planning document. It's enjoyed a public consultation, and this is the summarised response. I'm going to hand over to Andrew Marsh to continue, please.
Thank you, Chairman. At its meeting on the 22nd of October 2020, this committee thoroughly scrutinised the draft Haywards Heath Town Centre Master Plan. Members agreed unanimously that the draft Master Plan should be subject to public consultation, which, as the Chairman says, was carried out over a 6-week period between the 9th of November and the 21st of December last year. The report in front of the committee this evening summarises the response to the consultation and the next steps towards adoption. As you'll recall, the role of the Town Centre Master Plan is to strengthen and build upon the positive aspects of Haywards Heath Town Centre. Haywards Heath has a strong sense of community, attracts and retains both people and businesses due to its good communications and transport links, as well as by offering diverse attractions and facilities within high quality public realm and parkland. The Master Plan will be a tool to support economic growth and recovery, and the adoption of the Master Plan in March 2021 is a key objective within the Council's Economic Recovery Plan. As you'll recall, the Master Plan contains a series of public realm and infrastructure proposals, as well as identifying opportunity sites for regeneration. As mentioned last time, it is important to emphasise that the Master Plan is not the delivery vehicle for the proposals within it, and the Master Plan's role is to set the framework and principles should a scheme come forward in the future, i.e. it's not for the Master Plan to set out the fine details or fully designed schemes, and the reason for that will become more aware when we're going through the consultation responses. Consultation was carried out in full accordance with the Council's adopted Statement of Community Involvement and Community Involvement Plan, which was before members at the last meeting. Paragraph 5 of the report sets out the details of the engagement and how stakeholders could respond to the consultation. In total, 243 respondents submitted a response, and officers believe this is a very good response rate for a supplementary planning document in mid-Sussex. By comparison, we had around 41 respondents comment on the recent district-wide design guide SPD. One of the proposals that we used for consultation this time was an interactive map that set out the proposals within the document and summary information, and that was available on the Council's website. That generated over 7,500 views. So again, a high level of engagement there. There will, of course, be further opportunities for stakeholders to comment on individual schemes as and when they are progressed through the planning process. It will be at this stage that comments can be submitted on fine details, such as specific designs. In terms of the responses, overall, the content received a very positive response. Questionnaire responses showed that there was strong agreement regarding the Master Plan's role in supporting economic recovery, growth and investment, which is obviously a key aim, as well as for individual proposals within it. The objections received were predominantly related to elements that are out of the scope of the master plan itself. Paragraph 18 of your report sets out the high-level summary of the responses to the public realm and infrastructure improvements within the master plan. Aside from parking, which I'll address shortly, overall there was support from residents of the principle of these schemes. In particular, there was strong support for the reduction in speed limit to 20 miles an hour and the principle of removing unnecessary traffic from both South Road and the Broadway. Some respondents made comments regarding technical matters such as design or meeting specific standards, and as already mentioned, that isn't within the scope of the master plan. However, comments on those elements can be provided as further schemes are brought forward in the future. Paragraph 19 of the report sets out a high-level summary of the response to the opportunity sites. Overall, there was strong support for principles set out for the orchards, in particular encouraging non-retail uses to increase footfall and support the nighttime economy. Majority of comments received to the consultation on these elements were objections to the consolidation of the small car parks or the future of Clare Hall. Just as a reminder, the identification of an opportunity site in the master plan does not imply there is a scheme ready for delivery or place any obligation to bring a scheme forward. It is not a policy or an allocation. Instead, the master plan sets out the principles that would apply should a scheme be brought forward, decisions on which would be as a result of separate work streams and further detailed assessments. And the principles here are planning principles. Site-specific principles set out in the master plan would of course be in addition to existing planning policies such as the district plan and the neighbourhood plan. And the principles within the master plan are designed to be flexible as possible whilst providing protection and intentions for each scheme to guide the planning application process and future schemes. It is proposed to make a small amendment to the master plan to make this point clearer, in particular for the Clare Hall and car parks, and that's listed in the appendix. So at Appendix 1 of your report, starting on page 19, is the detailed summary of the responses to the consultation. The tables there set out the questionnaire response, which we had an electronic form consultation questionnaire where residents were asked specific questions and could air their views. The officer's comments on each of the points made are also listed in Appendix 1 alongside the issues that were raised and the way that officers intend to address the issues that were raised during the consultation. Subject to the committee's considerations, the next version of the master plan will be considered by council in March for adoption. Once adopted, the master plan will become a supplementary planning document. This will be a material consideration in the determination of planning applications, but will also be used to stimulate inward investment and to inform any investment funding opportunities in the future. And that summarises the consultation response and the next steps, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Andrew, very much indeed. Members, I'm going to open the floor for debate. Questions. And just to remind you, as a committee team, we've established a good method of working together. We've already agreed the draft plan previously in October, and our task today is to examine the changes to the document and see if they are fit for amendment. And so if you'll bear with me, we'll work through on a section by section basis. And I'd suggest that if a section that hasn't got any amendments proposed, that we move on to those that have, as we've already agreed it. Councillor Brown, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the explanation. I have a comment on the response, and it concerns, I'm just looking back at the actual supplementary planning document as it stands, and we have 8 conditions in the draft master plan, visions and objectives. And number 3, there's a proposal here to it says objective 3 can be amended to include reference to public transport. I'd like to think it will be. And I just would like to understand how it will be amended, because it says at the moment, providing opportunities for sustainable travel and public realm and improving public realm. So in order to fit, it's so important. I agree with the drafters of these variations. It's so important to get public transport in there. And I would suggest that should be providing opportunities for sustainable travel and including public transport. And then that improving public realm, I would have thought should go into term 2. So would you agree with me on that? So I think that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Can I go back to Andrew Marsh to actually kind of pitch on that one, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The wording that you proposed, Councillor Brown, is exactly how we would amend that. I think the consultation responses somebody had suggested, and we would agree that it would be to provide opportunities for sustainable travel, including public transport.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'm going to, if we can, I'd like to take these in order, as I said. So I'm going to wind us back and then go through speakers in a second. So we'll go back to the general issues on page 19, Appendix 1. That is a section with only a minor amendment, which is, I believe, page 31. There's an out-of-date map. So I'm going to go back to Andrew to actually kind of briefly comment on that, if I may, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, there was a map on page 31 of the document that needed amending. I think that was as a result of when the document was written, the Ordnance Survey hadn't had a chance to amend their base mapping, but we will investigate that. And if they have, and we've got that information, then yes, we can amend all of the maps that relate to, I think it was Perry Mount Road in particular.
Thank you. Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed. Any questions on this section, please, members, as there are no other amendments proposed? Okay, fine. Councillor Henwood, please. Thank you.
Sorry, I just didn't want to be quickly passed over. I think I want to make a comment on vision, objectives, and baseline, Chairman, when that comes up. Thank you.
Okay, fine. And don't worry, Councillor, you won't be missed out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to clarify where we are now. Are we talking about public realm and transport infrastructure? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. We're still on page 19 and let's get this right. Section of general issues, in terms of general objections, there are 8 comments. The officer's recommendations in that section are that the only change they make, other than what we've already agreed, is the map is changed. The next section is for general support. Again, there are no amendments tabled. Councillor Pulfer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little confused too, because I would like to make some comments on the public realm and some other items as well. And I'm not now sure when to make those comments, Mr. Chairman, so perhaps you could guide me.
Right. Thank you, members. It's clear that a systematic word-by-word approach isn't going to work on this, so I'm going to bow to your wishes, if I may, and take general comments as we go through. And I'm going to do my best alongside officers to actually make certain that we address every point on every change that we've actually kind of outlined in the document. I'm going to go back to Councillor Brown first, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with Councillor Pulfer. I was expecting to go through the, rather than the appendix, I think would be normal to go through the actual substantive document, and then we would then pick, the first thing we'd pick up would be public realm and transport infrastructure on page 12. Would you agree with me on that?
Just a second, please, Councillor.
I think we should.
Right. Apologies. Can I ask Judy Holmes to step in, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I think just to help clarify what the purpose of this meeting is and what we're asking the Scrutiny Committee to do today is you've already agreed the principles of the master plan. You did that at your last meeting, and you agreed that we would take the master plan to public consultation, which we've duly done. The purpose of the meeting this evening is to consider the responses and to consider the proposed amendments the officers are proposing to make in the light of those comments and public consultation. And it is that we're seeking to discuss this evening. Those are clearly laid out in Appendix 1. So we've laid out in the tables a summary of the comments made, the officers' comments and recommendations, and then the proposed changes for each of the sections within the master plan. So it is that we're seeking your debate on this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Henwood, please.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. This is a question in response to a response from a resident on page 22, and it does go back to the framework and principles of the town centre objectives, and the comment was made. And remember, this is only one out of 219 residents, so there could be a lot more residents who feel the same. Given that we are in a climate emergency, a climate change emergency, that I feel that should we take on board at least one of the residents' comments, that somewhere in our principles, town centre objectives principles, perhaps number 2, where it says, et cetera, and are commercially viable, perhaps not only commercially viable, but also recognize a climate change emergency and work towards zero carbon. This is a principle which I feel should be taken on board. We've had one resident, at least, that's commented on this. So I'm responding to what a resident has replied, and perhaps several more residents if there had been more than 219. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Henwood. I'm going to hand over to officers to actually answer this one. The basic principle of the public consultation and the community involvement is that we consolidate the document. We're not here to actually kind of put new policy into this document. It's to actually kind of summarise existing ones and use them more intelligently and more cohesively. Can I ask Andrew Marsh?
Thank you, Chairman. Just very, very briefly, I think it's just to go back to the role of the master plan as you've just described, and the sort of matters that Councillor Henwood raises are strategic matters that are important for the whole of the district, and those are ones that will be picked up in our district plan review and by current policies, both local and national. So not the role for the master plan, I would suggest.
And whilst I think many of us would agree with you, Councillor Henwood, this isn't the place to insert new policies for the council. Councillor Bates, please.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you on the Appendix 1 and following through that notion. I get down to the consultation, and although we've been told that 243 is a good number of consultees, I don't think that's a very good response. It's not very broad enough. I'm just thinking back to the 1961 plan, that we had a public consultation and plan that we could view, and I'm sure we had a lot more people in those days consulting and responding to. And it's very interesting to see what the outcome of that 20-year plan was. So I think the council have received complaints that residents in town council or the town were unable to respond to this particular consultation. I'm very disappointed about that.
Yeah. Can I ask Judy Holmes to comment on that, please, and respond? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think I just want to reassure members that when we consult on supplementary planning documents, we do not usually get a very high level of respondents. And this is actually a very high level, given that it was in respect of the town rather than across the district. Clearly, we would ordinarily expect a higher response rate on things like the district plan, for example. But we are satisfied that this is a good response, and that we carried out the consultation in accordance with the community involvement plan, and we have run this consultation along the same lines as we've run all consultation during the pandemic, and actually went slightly further by providing an interactive map to actually make it easier for people to make their comments.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Peacock, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been listening to the comments of Councillor Brown, Councillor Pulford, also Mrs. Holmes. Can I propose that we continue with your original scheme of going through Appendix 1 page by page? Because as you proceed, specifically for Councillor Pulford, on page 23, it does come to the topic public realm and transport improvement. So I think if we go through page by page, that will be more systematic than looking through the original document, which is, I think, what we want to be in the background of the scope of this actual item. So, proposal, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peacock. I'm somewhat bemused because I'm trying to please all of the people all of the time, and I'm stuck between two stools. It's a scrutiny committee. We are going to get the job done. So if it takes longer to do it one way or the other, that's absolutely fine, as long as everyone gets their chance to actually contribute as and when they need. And having prepared myself in that manner, reversing into the everyone is a yeah. Thank you, Councillor Marsh, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with the council, your suggestion, and Councillor Peacock. I do think members are beginning to get themselves in a bit of a bog down, as explained by Judy Holmes. We're not actually talking about every single item, and we're not going to try and insert anything. We're just talking about the responses and any amendments as the responses highlighted, and I think that's what we should stick to. I don't think we should zigzag all over the place. If there is a difference, and we are making a difference to it, like as highlighted on that page 19, we should stick to it, and then move over to the page and do general support. There are no amendments on that one. There are no amendments on general neuter. There is no amendments on the next one. I think we should stick to the amendments, Chairman.
Right, and I'm happy to go back to that, and was from page 19, and to make certain we tick all of these items off. And please bear with me, if we've missed anything out, we'll go and tidy up afterwards. If any member thinks they've missed something out, we'll make certain we address those issues. So we'll go through systematically. Are we okay with that, please? Anyone? Or more to the point, is there any dissent? Okay, thank you. Right, we've done the map. Going back to the general support, section, there were no amendments proposed. This was generally supportive of the master plan. There were only 6 comments, no amendments. Again, under the next section, there were no amendments. Under the consultation, there were no amendments proposed. The officers considered or noted that the consultation had run for 6 weeks, that it had been or shall we say advertised extensively on social media and the local Mid Sussex Times, and that it was available online, and as previously stated, it was viewed well over 7,500 unique times. Under the present circumstances, I asked the question yesterday, as how does that benchmark with previous consultations? The answer was, in terms of the design guide, which was perhaps more normal and district-wide, that had something just over 40 responses, which was something that kind of people generally care about, and the responses were very detailed. This one has had 243, and whilst we, as Councillor Bates alluded earlier, we would always wish for more. The reality is we've got 243, and we have to move on. In the next section is the vision, objectives, and baseline, which is on page 21, so that we can keep up. And this is in Appendix 1 of your agenda. It was basically asking, did we agree with the objectives of the master plan? Do they agree with the character areas, and do we agree that there should be some protection and enhancement? That was generally neutral, but there were 117 responses. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, 134 responses. This includes Councillor Brown's remark earlier regarding public transport. So I'm going to go back to Councillor Brown to actually contribute more specifically on that item, which is on referring to the objective number 3 in the public transport document. And from my memory, on the master plan, that was on section 1.2, item 3, which was to provide opportunities for sustainable travel at the very start of the document. Can I ask Andrew Marsh to comment before Councillor Brown asks any questions on that, please? Make certain we're on the right track.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the point on objective 3, that's already been addressed, I believe, Chairman.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed. Third change relates to Paramount Road, and I'm sure this is a much busier area. There were a total of 88 responses on that particular section of the master plan, with 67% agreement, 7% or 15% that disagreed. So there was a little more positivity there. The comments related to Waitrose, office space, cycling advisory lanes, and the master plan in general. I know that you've all read the document, but the proposed changes in that section was to clarify the text related to cycling improvements based on the discussions with West Sussex County Council. So I'm going to ask Andrew Marsh to actually kind of tell us what those discussions are at this moment, and then invite questions from members, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it was a number of responses that related to design and some specific points that again are not in the realm of the master plan. However, we can clarify that, and I think what we'll be doing is seeking some further information from the County Council in order to amend any wording there, just to make sure that that's absolutely clear.
Thank you very much indeed. Members. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I haven't really got anything to add to Paramount Road. I guess the consultation and discussions with West Sussex County Council are coming a bit late. I would have thought that we should have had that should have been done prior to us being asked to approve this and pass it on to full council. So we're not really scrutinising that situation. I mean, with three-tier local authorities, it's really, really difficult, as we all know only too well, to progress things other than straight planning issues. That's why the county council need to be on board. And I saw the comments, the brief ones I saw were very negative. It was subject to funding being available and that kind of thing. So I'd like to see a bit more, or I'd like to see a lot more clarification on that. Before, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowan. Could you bear with me? I've got a communications issue at this end. 1 second, please. Sorry about that. I'm up and running again now, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go to Judy Holmes now, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I am going to ask Andrew to say a few words, because I think it's worth reminding the committee who have been on this journey with us what exactly the master plan is and what it is not. I think we need to remember that the master plan sets principles, and we've been developing this over a period of time in partnership with the county council. What the master plan will not do is provide detailed design on what will be delivered as part of this master plan. That is a separate process that will run separately, and in the case of any transport or infrastructure related links will be led by the county council. This just basically sets the principles that would go with any proposals. And so can I just reassure the committee that the county council have been fully engaged, and what we're seeking to do here is to work with them to clarify the detail in the master plan where it's not clear to the public. But the final thing is that there will be further opportunities for consultation on each and every individual initiative that comes out of this master plan or that is developed as a result of the master plan. I just want to ask, Chairman, if I may, if Andrew Marsh has anything to add.
I think that covers it, actually, Judy. I think that's exactly as we understand it. It's already had engagement with the county, but they've suggested that there could be some additional wording, and we'll go back to them for specific suggestions on that.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed. So that moves us on to the Mustard Green Gyratory. Again, another very interesting topic. Seems broadly split with a lot of indecision. Approximately 56% agreed that there should be changes there. 29% were unsure. and 15% disagreed. And I'm one of them, but Councillor Polfer, please. Councillor Polfer, you're more muted.
So I am, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I did have my hand up for Perrymount Road because I just wanted to comment on the proposed change because it is relatively high level. But we're talking there cycle paths, which I'm all in favour of. But I think there needs to be a recognition that the cycle path starts in Perrymount Road and finishes in South Road. There is no further comment as to where it might be. And I think before we spend a substantial amount of money putting that in, there ought to be some realistic thinking as to where cycle paths are. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, fine. Andrew, can I ask you to actually come in and respond to that? And can I remind members, once they have spoken, to actually lower their hands? It makes the meeting a little easier for me to follow and officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, that's addressed in section 4.9 of the master plan, where there's a recommended proposal to provide a clear, logical cycling route from the station through Perrymount Road, the Broadway, and onwards to the orchards. So that's sort of picked up as an overarching principle. And of course, each of the individual public realm and transport sections here then pick out their specific bit. And as mentioned, those are all subject to further detail and design through the county process and onwards.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to dare to wander into Mustard Green now then and the gyratory again. It's not the most riveting of subjects, but here we go. There are proposed changes on this one. Again, as I said, 56% or so of the residents agreed that there should be changes here. 29% or so were unsure, and 15% disagreed that there should be changes. And that's to summarise. I think the comments are fairly succinct, and the officer recommendation is that there is additional text added to refer to the requirement to carry out more detailed modelling to impact assessments and costing before progressing any scheme at this location. Currently it's one way, and the proposal is to actually make it two-way and more. Councillor Bates, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Out of interest, in recent years, more than once, I'm sure, the traffic lights have failed at the Star Gyratory, and then the traffic flows wonderfully well. And I happened to be watching a very interesting video the other week, where it went around many places where they had removed traffic lights, and everything worked perfectly well. And I think that we should make a note, if we're going to do any further consultation, to look at that particular option, because if the lights were removed, etc., like they have when they're broken down, people might suddenly say there isn't a problem. I mean, the fact that is somebody's saying there's a problem now, and all we're doing is having a consultation about it. Well, why don't we fix it, or not do anything? Maybe take the lights out.
Right. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bates. Andrew, another one for you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think again that's a detailed design point that would come out during the consultation on any future plans and any future designs, and that the master plan is just principles.
Right, I'm going to put my own hand up because I'd like to say something on this. traffic flow, previously I'd like to ensure that when the traffic flows are measured, that they are measured at a time when we're not suffering from a pandemic with, shall we say, challenging traffic flows, which could have potentially conflict with accurate results, and that there are no roadworks being undertaken in and around the town to actually distort the figures as well. So it will need to be well planned. And thank you. Councillor Pulford, is this one you also wanted to speak on? No? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, is this South Road?
No, well, this is on Muster Green in the gyratory.
Sorry, then I've got no comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. So the next item is the Broadway, working through Appendix 1, which is at the bottom end of page 25. The responses there, again, were in the region of just over 100, 101 to be precise. 64% were in agreement that there should be changes, 23 were unsure, and 11% were against changes, to summarise. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm aware that this is going to be a high-level DPD, but don't forget we've got 80-odd pages of Tibbles and Centric reports, studies, which formed the basis for the very production of this in the first place. And I'd just like to, we're now talking about the Broadway, I'd just like to read you what the Metrobus response was on the Broadway. There isn't any mention of any improvement to reduce the appalling parking situation here. Congestion is terrible along here at most times of the day, where vehicles are parked on the road and stopping traffic to pass safely. There's a proposal to make the road narrower to 2.4 metres per lane along the Broadway. Buses are in fact 2.55 metres wide, excluding the wing mirrors, and would be forced to give way onto incoming traffic, adding more journey time to the bus services. The lanes would need to be at least 3.4 metres wide in each direction in order to allow larger vehicles to pass safely. And I might add, in relation to Councillor Pulford's comment about cycling in Perrymount Road and Broadway and South Road, this is an awful place for cycling as well because of these parked cars. So we're back to the county council again and on-street parking. What, you know, are these going to? Is this going to be part of the discussion with the county council? And I mean, I'm saying this because there's no proposal to make any changes to this, and I feel it's sort of setting the scene for something that's really very detrimental. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Julie Holmes, can you take that one, please?
Yes, I can, and I can just do what I've previously said, which is to repeat, unfortunately, myself, which is that this master plan sets broad principles. It does not develop detailed designs around any proposal within the master plan. Should a proposal come forward, it will be at that stage that further consultation will be carried out to inform any detailed design works. This master plan is simply a framework that sets broad principles, and it's in that spirit that we need to consider what the master plan, how far the master plan can go in what it says. But specifically, of course, should any proposal come forward from the county council, then clearly there will be much more detailed specific consultation and further design work.
Thank you. Councillor Bates, please.
Well, I think, yeah, I've got to really disagree with that statement. I mean, basically, there's been a long-term desire for the Broadway to be pedestrianised, and that's, you know, the first summary comment makes that. And the irony of it is, if you'd followed through the 1961 plan, it would have been possible to have had a public realm in the Broadway. Certainly there's a problem with not only cycling, but the traffic can't pass each other, the issue of the parking. So I think just to say at the end, no comment is ridiculous. When, you know, we've had the previous subject on Paramount Road saying we're going to have a cycleway from Paramount Road to the South Road, which means going through the Broadway, which means you've got to take out the cars and you've got to really make a statement to that extent. And or it might something come up in the future. So, you know, this is where we're at on it. You know, the first line of that consultation comment said pedestrianisation, and that's the strap word that we should be going for.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Remind our members that this is something that we've already agreed, this paragraph, and we're only really looking at it to see if there's any kind of strong feeling on any errors as well. I'm going to raise one in a minute, but I'm going to go back to Andrew Marsh for one to respond to that, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I would just draw your attention to two things. I think one of them is the fact that we had well over 60% of respondents that agreed with the proposals, and that there was one response by the looks of the summary of the comments that were regarding the full pedestrianisation of the Broadway. So I think that's one out of the 243 responses that we had overall. I think that the other point is that the master plan itself looks at the baseline situation regarding movement around the town, and one of the key areas of movement was the Broadway, along with South Road, as a key movement, east-west or north-south respectively, and therefore that the work that had been done in a previous Atkins report by civic engineers who worked on behalf of Tybbalds in this report, they would have considered an option for that, but in the end decided that that wasn't a feasible thing to do, and that's why, you know, the principle for that isn't included within the master plan itself.
Thank you. Before I go on, I would remind members that one of the objectives of the master plan is to actually deter traffic in line with the West Sussex objectives of 2 not through. Haywards Heath master plan is to make the town, the Haywards Heath destination, Haywards Heath, is to make the town a destination, and to be frankly unattractive for through traffic. And so if there are compromises and it deters traffic coming through the town, then so be it. That I'm speaking very much as a ward councillor, town and district for that one. I'm going to go to Councillor Marsh, and then I'm going to put my own hand up on a technical error, if I may, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to reiterate again, and basically what Judy Holmes says, we're trying to stray into and add things into the consultation after the consultation. We're only here to scrutinise the amendments to the actual bit, not go over what we sent out to consultation. I think some members are beginning to really try your patience and everybody else's patience by trying to add bits into it, which the consultation's already happened. If there's no amendment, we don't need to talk about it, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Perhaps a little bit more kind of indulgent, but anyway, in terms of the Broadway, if you refer to page 22, not of the appendix, but of the master plan itself, under character areas, the third item down is the Broadway, which is known for its thriving food and beverage uses, with many building frontages set back to allow for tables and seating or forecourt parking. Now, I've suggested, I am strongly suggesting that the words or forecourt parking is removed. And the reason for that is that threefold. Firstly, we don't have forecourt parking in the Broadway on that particular spot, which is evidenced on page 27 of the report of the master plan. It's specifically prohibited with enforcement regularly delivered by Mid Sussex enforcement officers. It's public land. with the response under the responsibility of West Sussex County Council, and to actually leave that in there, so to suggest forecourt parking would actually contravene the community involvement objectives of actually introducing new policy. So I'd advocate that that should be removed to make the document correct factually. Please, can I go to Andrew Marsh, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're happy to make a factual correction if required there. That's not a problem. I just draw your attention to 4.5 of the master plan, which does have some high-level proposals for controlling parking on forecourts and prohibiting where not necessary and where it is able to be controlled. So just to draw your attention to that.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. I just want to make certain, because it's taken a long time to actually get the parking abuse removed in that area. And I'd hate, as a ward councillor, to see it return. And indeed, it would actually be contrary to Section 18 of or Principle 18 of the Design Guide as well. So, as there are no amendments, I'm going to go on to I think it's Councillor Pulfer's favourite subject, which is South Road. We've had 97 responses, 56% of which agree, 28 unsure, and 20% disagree. Widening pavements, decreasing traffic speed are mentioned, slowing traffic down to facilitate improvements in public transport, facades in need of improvement. Disagreed regarding, this seems to be quite controversial, the median strip along South Road by some residents, and a carefully controlled low traffic zone along South Road. That was proposed by Campaign for Rural England, along with indicative plans of the Havers Heath Town Centre Transport Study. Now, there are proposed changes which are to amend the text of the median strip and add a caveat subject to meeting required design standards and in consultation with West Sussex County Council and the bus companies. Councillor Pulford, did you want to speak on this item?
Well, it's a comment, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. And it probably follows your lead in a little minutiae. Because I think if I'm now cottoning on to what we're looking to do, and effectively we're looking to make sure that the excellent work that Mr. Marsh has done is encapsulated in the comments and recommendations. And I think it just needs to have an awareness that, as you've already just mentioned, there's been proposal that in fact be pedestrianised, which probably is never going to happen, but certainly a greater reduction in speed. And it needs a certain amount of strategy as to one end of the town to the other, and some recognition of the Atkins report, which is mentioned in this document, because that needs to come into this section as well. And I'll leave it there, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pulfer. Thank you. I don't think there was a question hidden in there, so I'm going to go to Councillor Bates, if I may, please. Thank you.
I think it's pleasing to see that people say they want a speed reduction 20 miles an hour. I'm just concerned how this will work or not. You know, if you go to other towns, you'll see 20 mile an hour speed limits. Traffic goes down that road, and that's still the case with Haywards Heath. Whatever speed, there's still going to be a volume, or maybe the same volume of traffic, particularly large vehicles, that are going to go from one end to the other. And I think now that we have a relief road in, we should have, 10 years ago, instigated a system where you couldn't drive through the former A272 anymore, but it was, you could only go in and out at one end and not get out at the other end. to try and do, as you say, deter traffic. So, you know, we'll see how it goes with the speed limit for a start, but my other view is that we need to deter traffic.
Chairman, point of order. What were we talking about? South Road or speed limits?
I was going to address that.
Speed limits in
Thank
South
you,
Road.
Councillor Marsh. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bates, too. As I said, we are, as helpfully reminded by our Vice Chair, we are talking about the changes, not to actually kind of reinvent the debate that we've already agreed on the document itself. Andrew, could you actually enlighten us a little bit on this median strip, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the consultant's view was that a median strip would be potentially help to slow traffic down and would provide a sort of refuge point in the middle of what is quite a wide road for pedestrians to cross. Again, that's a point that the county have now raised on a design point of view, because they have started the detailed design work on that, some early stages of that, and looking at some modelling of that. So because of that, they are suggesting that, or we are suggesting on reflection of their comments, that we'd like to keep it in because of the benefits that it would bring, but it would be subject to meeting design standards and in consultation with the county and bus companies.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Any more questions on the median strip, please, members? Okay, fine, thank you. Sussex Road. There are no suggestions that or no proposed amendments to something that we've agreed on that area. 62% of respondents agreed that with the proposals, 24% were unsure, and 13% of the stragglers were disagreed. So it is what it is. There are no amendments there. So does anybody have, shall we say, bearing in mind we're not going to actually reopen the debate on something we already agreed, any more additional comments? Okay, thank you. Speed limits. I'm sure this is going to be an emotive subject. 20-mile-an-hour speed limits zones have been suggested and debated in the town for years. 62% of the respondents agree that speed should come down. 12% were unsure, and 25% disagree. And that was from a total of 96 responses. There were no amendments proposed, but I think Councillor Henwood wanted to actually kind of have a chip in here anyway. And as I said, I promised that we'd make space for people to actually air their views, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I totally support the 20 speed limit, but I do wish to make further comments on another section coming up.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Henwood. Right. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I very much support the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit as well, and I see that there's no change here, but it seems to me it's something that could be brought forward at very little cost in the area of the town centre master plan, and you know, I'd like to think that we don't need to wait around for it. You know, we should be finding funding, because the county council haven't got any funding at all. So, you know, how is any of this going to be funded? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Right. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go to Andrew to actually comment briefly on funding and implementation for that 20-mile-an-hour limit, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Not on the 20-mile limit specifically, but there is obviously an implementation strategy, which is section 7 of the master plan, which sets out the lead agents, the indicative timescale. And you'll see from one of the proposed amendments later on that we're going to add a little bit more information in there on potential sources of funding.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. cycling. I'm looking at the screen and I'm expecting it to light up with a number of regular candidates. I'll give you a quick overview. 63% of respondents, which was 109 responses, 63% of which agreed with the suggestions, 20% were unsure, and 19% disagreed. So again, the weight is there so that I should have it. There are additional comments, but the additional commentary regarding appropriate cycle storage, and I've got a mental note to actually cycle storage and or parking, just in case that item is raised, because I know it's can be clearer, and the reference to non-motorised users in section 4.9. Members, Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the proposed amendment in the text is to refer to appropriate design and cycle storage. Cycle storage is completely the wrong thing to say. It's cycle parking. You park it. So as you've already made out. But the response here is tremendous when you think 61% of respondents appreciate this and want to see it happen, and when in fact the number of people cycling is about 1 to 2% in Mid Sussex. So I think this proposed amendment is, well, I think it's a trivial thing about cycle storage. People will park their bikes when they've got a bit of a railing. That's all they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I basically looked at the certainly the diagrams in detail for the Broadway, and there were certainly certain areas at both ends that were identified potentially for cycle parking, not storage. And I'm sure a nod of the head will do, but officers will note the wording there is very specifically parking. Okay, I think that'll put smiles on faces. Now thank you. Councillor Bates, please. Thank you very much.
I was going to say, I wondered what that cycle storage was all about, but the fact that a lot of people are talking about cycle parking, which is something I've been going on for God knows how long. But yeah, I mean, I did write a substantive paper on cycling, but obviously most of it is not related to the town centre. I mean, basically, I've got a view from my cycling background that you can cycle in this environment really without a great deal of cycle ways. I mean, some of them are very helpful across like Clare Park, but I think we could get on with a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in a lot of the roads.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bates. Andrew, can you ask you to respond on that, please?
I'm not sure there was a question in there, Chairman.
Oh. No, I don't think there was either, to maybe provide some reassurance that other than the fact that there is this dilemma regarding locking stuff up in storage and parking up against provisioned units or specific cycle rails in and around the Broadway and other areas of the town, I think would put some smiles on faces.
Sure, I think the amendment that we're suggesting is, as you'll note under the officer's comments / recommendations, is additional commentary on cycle parking, if that's what we prefer, and that would be in accordance with our design guide, which also mentions similar matters. So it's just to reinforce that point.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed. I want to make certain that we are very thorough on this particular subject. Parking, interesting one. The figures are a little different. We've got 31% agree with the proposals in the master plan, 15% are unsure, and then we've got 54% disagree. And so I'm going to go to Councillor Henwood first, if on this one, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm quite concerned about the middle paragraph under officers' comments. When we're talking about broad principles, the idea that potentially a multi-story at the orchards might be considered a broad principle. If we go back to the original document, and I'm looking on page 127, it actually says potentially the provision of a multi-story or decked car park. So that is in the original master plan, okay? So are we now saying that a broad principle will exist of a multi-story car park at the orchards? Now, if you go back to the response from the public, you can actually see that lots of comments against a multi-story, 56% actually do not want enhanced car parking to be focused at the orchard. So I am concerned that we might be accepting a broad principle which in fact was not laid out in the original master plan. So could you clarify that for me, please, Chairman? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Andrew Marsh on this one. But the point was, it's not just the orchards, the parking, it's parking in Haywards Heath, the 56% disagreed with. Andrew.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the Councillor Henwood's correct in that the master plan under the orchards mentions enhanced town centre parking, and it does mention there at Hazel Grove Road there was the potential for multi-storey car park, and there was a mention as well at the orchards about multi-storey or decked car park. We're not suggesting any amendments to the master plan on that point. So those are still in there, and the aims and principles for the orchards in particular talk about enhanced town centre parking. So there's no amendments to that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for clarifying. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So my question is, there's no amendments proposed, but it says any proposed closure of car parks will take account of the aforementioned response. Well, how can that be? Because, you know, when this DPD is published, if and when, nobody know what those aforementioned responses were. For instance, they haven't been published anywhere. All we've got is the summaries, which I'm grateful for, in the Appendix 1. But so how will we take account of these aforementioned responses? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Just to correct you, it is a supplementary planning document, not a DPD. I'm going to go to Julie Holmes to actually respond, though, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I might ask Andrew to provide a more technical response to this, but you're right, Chairman, to make this very, very important distinction between a DPD and an SPD. A supplementary planning document does not have the same status as a development plan document, and the legislative requirements around the consultation are therefore very different. And we are not required to provide details of the detailed responses. What you have before you is a summary of those, and the interpretation of those has been included in the appendix. Of course, all of these comments are being considered, and the proposed amendments in light of those comments are those that you are debating today. And the final document will be amended accordingly following this meeting and will be presented to Council in March for adoption as a supplementary planning document. I'll just, Chairman, if I may, ask Andrew if he's got anything he wants to add to that.
No, nothing else from a technical point of view. The approach that we take to consultation and the response to consultation for this SPD is the same as all other SPDs. I think just in response to the question originally, I think what we're saying here is that the master plan includes principles for a potential multi-storey or decked car park at either of those two locations. And it's right to include some principles on design or how those would operate should a proposal come forward for them. And the officer's comments / recommendations that are set out on page 30 explain that any decisions made on closure of car parks or decisions on what the future capacity and how that capacity is met are not for the master plan to determine. However, should decisions be made or future proposals come to us, it seems sensible to me that we've got some principles in the master plan that we would be able to use from a planning point of view to determine an application either way on them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you very much for allowing me to come back, and thank you, Judy Holmes, for correcting me on SPD. I'm sorry about that. I understand. I just wanted to come back on another matter, which is Franklin Road car park, and that's been lumped in with the three tiny car parks. And you know, I haven't really got a problem with repurposing those. But in terms of the Franklin Road car park, it's a large and important, it's a large-ish and important car park to people who use the shops. So I think that's probably one of the reasons that people are, you know, the consultation has come back against the parking. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really think it should be included with these small car parks. My wife uses it regularly.
All right, thank you, Councillor Brown. Again, this is one of the sections that we have previously agreed and promoted to the public consultation. It's come back to us, and there are no proposals to actually change the document that we've agreed on that section. So inevitably there will be disagreement on points by some members some of the time, and I think this is one of them. I'm going to move on to Victoria Park now, with noting those comments. This Victoria Park is one of our primary assets in the town. It's 67% of the responders agreed that the changes were positive. 18% were unsure and 15% disagreed. There are a total of 100 responses on that particular item. I'm trying to look down at, yes, and not surprisingly, the issue of the hedge on South Road has come to the forefront there, particularly with 5 residents. The raised area between South Road and Victoria Park could be better utilised as a community space, and the Town Council supports the improvement and vision for Victoria Park, looks forward to delivery of progression of the Victoria Park Master Plan, which is a separate document following our earlier representations. And there are no amendments proposed there. But any brief comments before we move on to the next section, bearing in mind we've already agreed this? Okay, fine, thank you very much. Councillor Bates. Councillor Bates, you are muted.
Yeah.
Nice and quiet this end.
Yes. Sorry, yes. We are in a consultation and we have had comments back, and the hedge has caused a bit of discussion in Hayward Town Council and other places. It's a pity that the hedge, which is a Mid-Sussex Council hedge, has been poorly maintained. But if you removed it, you're going to have to replace it with a fence and probably planting behind it. So I'm not really sure what the objective is, because there is no indication that you're going to widen the pavement like you did, or it was done, when on the other side of the road, when they took the graveyard back and widened the pavement and provided car parking spaces. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would like to see that hedge retained.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bates. I'm going to move on and not necessarily respond to that. You are in a minority of 15% with that views. So Gateways and wayfinding. Again, we've had 99 responses to this one. 64% agreed with the proposals, 22% were unsure, and 14% disagreed. There are no proposed amendments to this one, but again, it's the gateway items, signage, public transport. Even a comment as why would we invent one when Mustard Green already exists? But we're talking of areas such as the roundabout at the end of South Road, Commercial Square, Mustard Green, certain areas of the Broadway, end of the Broadway, and so on and so forth. I'm going to go to Councillor Brown, if I may, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd just like to draw the Scrutiny Committee's attention to what the Metrobus said about this. The master plan makes reference that the station is the main point of arrival in Haywards Heath, and the lack of clear routes.
Councillor Brown,
yes,
can I go back to you? This is gateways and wayfinding, not public transport.
Oh, this is about wayfinding. May I?
Can you keep it short though, then, please?
I'm sorry?
Can you keep it short then, because
yes, sir.
I don't think it fits. Thank you.
There is a lack of clear signage in place at the station directing people how to get to key destinations within the town. And in other words, I won't go on, from the station to the bus stops at the bottom of Perrymount Road. It's a dickens of a job to get across. And this is a really important point that, you know, it's all very well putting all these fancy signs up, some real-time indicators of what's required there at the station. If you get off at Three Bridges, you find all the bus stops indicated in real time. So that's the point I was going to make. I think Metrobus have made it well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right. Sorry about that. Right. Other small scale improvements. Again, this is a fairly minor item. The no proposed changes. 63% agreed, 21% didn't know, 19% disagreed. These proposals were largely supported based on the questionnaire response. No comments were provided on this matter. So there's bearing in mind we've already approved this section, there is nothing to discuss because there were no comments other than the fact there were ticks in boxes. Meanwhile uses. Now, again, these proposals were largely supported based on the questionnaire. No comments were provided on these matters. 51% agreed, 38% were unsure, which doesn't surprise me perhaps, and 11% disagreed, which then leads us directly into the opportunity sites. Perhaps it's sites, or whether they represent an opportunity remains to be seen. The orchards is the top of that list. We've got, and I'll read the top three issues. Do you agree with the principle of encouraging non-retail uses such as leisure to the orchards? 63% of respondents said yes, 37% said no. So it's 2/3, 1/3. Again, public realm improvements. Would make the orchards more inviting, with a question mark. 62% agreed, 38% disagreed. Do you agree that the orchard should be the focus for the enhanced car parking within the town centre? Not surprisingly, 44% said yes, but 56% said no. There were 145 responses on that item. Lots of comments and the proposed changes. I'm trying not to skip over the detail here, but I know that members have done their homework and read through these documents as I have. So I'm not going to read them out word for word, but the proposed changes are to strengthen design elements, particularly in relation to the multi-storey car park proposal, refer to the design guide supplementary planning document and refer to our car parking strategy for the district. Members, any questions or comments, please? Councillor Bates, please.
Yeah, I was interested to read about the comment about relocating a library into the Orchard area, considering what's happened at Burgess Hill with the loss of library and relocation. I just wondered where somebody got that idea from. We've got a very good library in the town, but it seems somebody wants to move it. Maybe others.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. I was reading some literature earlier overnight, so regarding moving the library, and which I could remind you about some time ago. But are there any other comments at all, please? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Andrew, can you enlighten us and expand on the proposed changes on that document, which is the 6th change in the document that I can see so far?
In terms of the orchards?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think what it is again is just to re-emphasise the importance of design for a multi-storey. There is some elements of that in there, but we can just for completeness cross-refer to our district-wide design guide. Again, based on the discussion we had just a few minutes ago on car parking, just have some additional commentary on there about the role that the parking strategy and work that flows from the parking strategy, the work that would have in terms of capacity, types of car parking at the orchards and any future decision making.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, Clare Hall. There were, I'm trying to actually look at the statistics here. There were, not surprisingly, quite a few responses on this one. 183 responses, so the majority of people responding clicked on Clare Hall as well. Do we agree? Do you agree with the questions posed to the public in the questionnaire? Well, do you agree with the aims and principles set out on the site on page 72? 38% said yes, and 62% said no. Do you think there's a need for a community facility in the town? 81% of the respondents said yes, and 19% said no. There are a list of multi-purpose use ranges: cinema, voluntary spaces, citizens' advice, small theatre, performances, bars, public meeting spaces, and other detail, art gallery, house facilities, and of course blood donation. Would you expect provision of a community facility if it required public subsidy? 49% said yes. Partial subsidy, 45% said full subsidy, and 6% advocated there should be no subsidy at all. Do you think it should be included on the Clare Hall site? 72% said yes, and 28% were against that. So reading down, as I said, there were 117 responses. Actually 183 responses in total. And the proposed changes, and again I'd remind members this is something we have already agreed as a scrutiny committee, that the proposals are to amend the aims and principles to clarify that the principles only apply once the first principle has been satisfied. Now I'm going to go to Andrew to actually kind of clarify and to actually make certain members understand what that sentence means, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just that obviously the principles in the master plan are related to the planning principles for Clare Hall, but the important aspect is the first one, as set out in the draft master plan, which is an assessment to establish the need for such a facility and whether community facilities could be re-provided on site or elsewhere within the town. And that's the first stage. And we're going to make it clearer in the document that that is the first step of the process. And should that first principle be satisfied, the following 6 principles, which are the planning principles about relationships with the building, Clare Park, links to the station, crossings and heritage and the like, then apply at that point. So it's a sort of hierarchical process in terms of the principles that are set out in the master plan itself and their planning principles.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Andrew. And just to actually make that relevant, that would actually address some of the issues that Councillor Brown raised in his last comments in terms of wayfinding. Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Eggleston, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Sorry.
Well, it's a request that we make one other technical legal amendment to the master plan to reflect the decision that was made, or the consent order that was made on the 13th of January. So as you all members will know, the consent order effectively put on hold the permanent closure of Clare Hall and said that we can't rely on the decision that was made. And there's a sentence on page 72 of the master plan which refers to the permanent closure of Clare Hall. So to be properly compliant with the consent order, I would ask that it's agreed that we delete references to that, just to ensure that the council is safe.
Thank you, Councillor Eggleston. Much appreciated. Can I ask Mr. Clark to step in on this one, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. What we're looking at tonight is a planning document. Councillor Eggleston is talking about matters that will be dealt with by the Cabinet, and therefore I suggest that the comment isn't added to this planning document. It will be a matter, as I said, for the Cabinet when they come back to the question of Clare Hall. Clare Hall is currently open.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Councillor Marsh, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm glad Mr. Clark stepped in then, because I was going to step into that one. It's the Cabinet, and then their decision will be scrutinised by full council. We're not here to tell the Cabinet what they should be doing or not doing at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just referring back to our previous meeting where we passed this this document, this supplementary planning document for public consultation. We were advised that following consultation, officers will review the feedback, and where appropriate, changes will be proposed to the master plan. The final draft version of the document will be reconsidered by the committee before being submitted to the full council in spring 2021. Now, I would submit that we're not at that position, because there's still quite a lot of things that are not in front of us. We haven't got a full document to assess, and I think we should be fully informed before we do that. I also think that there's a number of things that are unsatisfactory here, and I personally would like to have a session with the officers to discuss that, and maybe even the whole scrutiny committee should be thinking about that. So, and finally, I'd just like to draw your attention to the comments by CPRE Sussex. The heart of the master plan lies the premise that more vehicles and more parking for more vehicles should be allowed into the centre of the town.
Chairman, point of order, I thought we're talking about Clare Hall, not his pet project about flipping cars.
I'm just trying to, I'm not talking about Clare Hall at all, no, forgive me. I'm talking about this document, and I wanted to make sure I got an opportunity to talk about it before we went to a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. If you don't mind, we'll come back to that point if you feel it needs to be made towards the end of the meeting, if we can. I'm not going to skip over that. We will address
Appreciate
that. Councillor Hatton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for clarification, please, in relation to your response to Councillor Eggleston, it says on our document, purpose of report, summary and recommendations, and it says that the Scrutiny Committee recommends to Council. It doesn't say recommend to Cabinet, and of course we don't have any input on the Cabinet discussions. How can we ensure that what we have said today goes to Cabinet and that we have an opportunity to recommend to Council some things that we have said today or other people have said? So should that recommendation be altered? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to hand that one to Julie Holmes, if I may, please. Thank you, Councillor Hatton.
Thank you. I think just to clarify, I think we're getting a bit muddled again here. The master plan sets broad principles and is a planning document, as Tom Clark has indicated. And so therefore, as a supplementary planning document, the usual process would be for the Scrutiny Committee to agree these changes which are proposed. And I think it's important to remember that the majority of the comments that we've received have been very positive. It's a very positive set of consultation comments, and they are only resulting in very minor changes, all of which will be included and highlighted in the document that will be put before Council for consideration by full Council. It's only full Council that can adopt the supplementary planning document. I think the reference to the Cabinet that Mr. Clark was making was in reference to any individual decisions taken by the Council in relation to its landowning responsibilities and not as a local planning authority. So they are two very different and distinct processes.
Thank you, Judy, very much indeed. Right. That brings us on to Mid Sussex District here. Councillor Eggleston, before I'm going to move on. Thank you.
I do apologise to members for pressing this point about the consent order. And I think two things. One, the master plan has to reflect accurately the state of affairs. So Mr. Clark quite correctly pointed out that Clare Hall is currently open. That's not denied, and it's a matter of fact that the consent order has said to the council that we cannot rely in any way on the September decision to close Clare Hall permanently. So by referring in a master plan document to the decision to permanently close Clare Hall is not accurate because it's open and the court has said we can't rely on it. And a decision about its closure or otherwise will be made at a later date. And all I was asking for is that we actually reflect the state of affairs, which Mr. Clark has confirmed, and we keep this council safe and not at risk. Because if we put in a master plan document, something which refers to the permanent closure of a facility that the court has said we can't treat as being permanently closed, we run a risk. And I'm just trying to get us to avoid a risk. It doesn't alter the direction of travel in the master plan document. It simply is the deletion of one sentence that keeps us safe. And I would have thought that we would want to keep safe.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Eggleston. I'm going to go back to Tom Clark to respond, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Yes, the document should reflect what the situation is now. So that can probably be done by deleting that sentence.
Thank you.
Fine. Thank you. Right, I'm going to go on to Mid Sussex owned car parks. Again, it's 150 responders. 32% agreed with the proposals in the master plan, 68% disagreed. Do you agree with the principles for these sites set out in page 73? The proposed changes just to remind you that they from officers is to include additional supporting text to explain that the decision to close any of the car parks will be subject to additional assessment through the parking investment strategy, which arises from the parking strategy. This will be subject to sufficient parking capacity being demonstrated, and I can remind members that most of us were on that committee. Any specific comments or questions on that, please? In fact, probably better actually. I'm kind of muddling this a bit. It would be better to actually kind of ask Andrew to actually explain that one before we have any comment.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the proposed change there is in relation to the objections that were received, and the objections that were received were providing reasons for why the car park should remain open, for example. There was some strong objections in that respect, and what the master plan is doing, similar to other discussions that we've had, is providing the principle should a scheme come forward for those additional Mid Sussex owned car parks, and that work through other work streams such as the parking strategy will be the determining factor on and look at all the detailed background information and capacity studies, etc., to be the vehicle for that decision. The master plan is just there so that the principles of the master plan are there so that if a decision is made, there are some principles in place that we can look at from a planning perspective.
Thank you very much indeed. Comments, questions, members? Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed. Additional opportunity sites. Again, the question was, do you agree with the principle of sites F to M set out on page 67 of the 67 of the report? 32% said no, said yes, and 68% disagreed with a no. Are there any other opportunity sites within the master plan boundary with the potential for improvement? 15% said yes, 85% said no. That's out of 125 responses. Stockwell Court was mentioned, plus difficulties. Woolworths, the old Barbican Court, to the Broadway, which is the old business centre. The Priory site, many were deemed to be too aspirational. And what would you say to the existing occupiers, such as the Texaco station, Royal Mail, and the fire station around the Commercial Square area? Too much emphasis on residential housing, and so on and so forth. There were proposed minor changes. A minor amendment to Site G to the Broadway to reflect the recent planning application, and 2, to review current text related to availability and viability to provide clarity, and lastly, to add additional wording related to improving the shop facades in Stockwell Court. Andrew Marsh, can I ask you to actually guide members before we open this up to questions and comments, please?
Yeah, just very briefly on this one. I think the responses that we had to the question, the yes 32% and the no 68%, weren't then reflected in any of the comments that were received, particularly by email. So I think there was a bit of confusion regarding the car parks in that point. And then the additional wording that we're looking to include is related to the facades at Stockwell Court, and there's some reasoning on that both in the report and under the officer's comments / recommendations of that section.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Andrew, very much indeed. Appreciate that. Policy interventions and implementation. Sorry, Councillor Marsh, please.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. Just clarification from Mr. Clark. Those that are on this committee are sitting on the planning committee tomorrow. To the Broadway has been determined. Do you think we should just not take part in that part of any debate on that, because it could influence tomorrow's planning decision?
Yes, Councillor Marsh, best not to comment tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Bates, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think there is scope for some of these sites with a local plan study, etc. Interesting to see Stockwell Court crop up, because that's in my ward. It's a long-standing eyesore. It'd be interesting to see where it goes with the structure, whether it's going to be stable enough for how long, and I hate to mention the dreaded word cladding.
Thank you. Right, policy interventions and implementation. Total comments of just one on this item. There were no proposed amendments. It's embedded in the document. So with that, that leads us to implementation. Total of just 6 comments. Again, a little bit more extensive, more information regarding funding sources, which we touched upon. There was too much risk for the council in funding the schemes. The town council anticipates involvement in the detailed, states its wishes to be involved in any detailed development of master plan as individual projects are promoted for delivery, not simply as a consultee after the plan is drawn up. The table on page 78 also implies schemes to Broadway, Perryman Road and Sussex roads, and suggests that they are identified for further progression with the local transport improvement programmes in conjunction with West Sussex County Council. And then we've got again more reference to the local transport improvement programme for annual delivery and the annual delivery programme, and to note the inclusion of any scheme in that programme in terms of funding opportunities from West Sussex County Council. The proposed changes to that, and I'm going to go back to Andrew in a minute again for this one, is the additional text to set out examples of funding sources, and an explanation that schemes are subject to funding being secured will be added. Additional clarity to set out that the master plan is not the vehicle for delivery of future schemes, however it provides a framework for that, and to amend text to clarify the position related to the West Sussex County Council's local transport improvement programme, and to amend that the annual delivery programme. Andrew, once again, if you can expand and lead members through the proposed changes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the first 2 are just minor points of clarification, just to explain the role of the master plan again, and what happens next, just to flesh that out really in that section. And the last one is just a point of clarity related to the County Council's response. It's just a factual update.
Right, thank you, Andrew, very much indeed. On that last point, an explanation from Andrew, are there any more questions or comments, please? Right. Okay, fine. I'm going to ask Sally to actually go back to the specific question that Councillor Brown raised, just to actually make certain that it's addressed clearly and properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I think it's worth reminding members again that this is a supplementary planning document, and this is part of the usual process. The response was very largely supportive, and the changes that are being proposed are all of a factual nature, or in fact points of clarification. I think the report and the schedule make very clear what those points of clarification will be. And I think it's worth also reminding members that the detailed changes will be set out in a full report, which will go to Council and will be subject for further discussion at the Council meeting.
Thank you, Sally, very much indeed for that explanation. Now, with that, we've been through the document I hope we feel that we've been through it thoroughly. It's taken a lot longer than I thought, but nevertheless, before I move on, because we're heading towards the recommendations, Councillor Brown, do you want to come back on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The point I was making was that we haven't got the finished document in front of us. I feel there should be an opportunity, at least for members of this scrutiny committee, or the committee itself, to review the final document as was promised in the next steps at the previous stage. So yes, that's what I would propose and think is necessary. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Brown, very much. Judy, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, I can simply reiterate what I've already said, which is that the Scrutiny Committee have had an opportunity to look at the pre-consultation document. You've now seen the comments that have been made and the officers' proposals. And what will now happen is that a full report will be prepared for council, because it is it's a function of the council to adopt this document. And alongside that document, there will be a schedule of all the changes that have been proposed as a result of the consultation.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, Councillor Bates, please.
Yes, I'm speaking in support of Councillor Brown's remarks about further discussion and reporting. I think that we haven't really covered all the points, and one idea I had was that the three councils involved got together and knocked their heads together about some of these issues. And also, we haven't really had any proper discussion about the shopping, the footfall there in the orchards or whatever, the parts of the town. But surely that's what people will be asking us, why we've got all these empty shops. And I don't see any strategy here at all to enable our shops to maintain themselves. So that's the reason why I'm supporting Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Judy, can you come back on that one, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm disappointed to hear those comments, actually, because I think that this committee has worked very hard on scrutinising the master plan, and officers have worked hard on trying to help the committee, this committee, understand what a master plan is and actually what it is not. And certainly a master plan's role is not to consider footfall at the shopping areas. It is a planning document that sets broad principles to enable and encourage development. It assists in helping to actually create a town that local people have had an opportunity to comment on. So I think that from an officer's perspective, we would suggest that the outcome of the consultation has been extremely positive. It has been very supportive and has actually only resulted in the need for very minor changes, all of which will be fully scheduled and available to the council when they consider the document for adoption. And the changes that you will see are very minor, as illustrated in Appendix 1.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Right. I think, Councillor McNaughton, as Cabinet Member, would you actually like to contribute, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think some members have been slightly confused on the purpose of a master plan. The master plan is there for the benefit of the town centre and to encourage regeneration and to encourage people to come to invest in the town. And we can't around deciding how many shops are open or closed or who's in them. That isn't the realm of the master plan. I think the master plan has to be quite broad to get enough interest of the people that are going to invest in the town. So I think where we've come from is, from nowhere to coming to a good place. I can understand people's concerns about all the other issues, but they're not for the master plan. The master plan isn't the delivery vehicle. It's trying to encourage people to come in to deliver. And that's the difference between some of the comments and where we are actually with the master plan. And I believe the master plan is a document that should be supported. And what we always have to remember is that we don't set tablets of stone with every single thing that we say. If someone comes up with a better idea, then of course that will come back to the council. But what this is saying we are waiting for people to come and invest within Haywards Heath. And it is confined to the town centre to try and get a town centre master plan. And some people think we should go further afield. Well, that's not what this is all about. It is for the centre of the town and just a town centre master plan. I believe it's very good. I've enjoyed the debate. In actual fact, I understand where there's a little bit of confusion, but I think, Chairman, you did very well in allowing everybody to have their say. And we can't accommodate everything that people think should be accommodated, but what we've got is a supplementary planning document. And what you have to remember, everything within the district plan is still relevant. So, when people think we haven't said this, you have to use this as a supplement to the district plan as well. So, just bear in mind, we're not doing away with any other policies. So I think you've done well, Chairman. So thank you very much. That's useful.
Thank you, Councillor McNaughton. It is, for me, it's a bit like eating porridge without water or milk. It's a struggle at times, particularly with a document as, shall we say, as technical as this, and with half the members actually reading it one way and the others reading it the other. It's a question of how much, whether the glass is half empty or half full, and we are looking for a consensus and balance. We've been through it twice now. The first time in immense detail, and we're now moving to the recommendation, which I will read just so that we know that what we're voting on is that Councillor Marsh, before I do, I'm sorry, I gather that you...
I did. I just wanted to congratulate you, Chairman, on a very difficult committee. Some people didn't understand what it's all about. The clue's actually in the name: supplementary planning document consultation. So you did really well, Chairman. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Okay. The recommendations are that the Scrutiny Committee considers the consultation responses on the consultation draft and the Haywards Heath Town Centre Master Plan, considers the proposed modifications to the draft Haywards Heath Master Plan set out in Appendix 1, which we've just done, and 3, then recommends to Council, subject to the modifications set out in Appendix 1 being implemented, that the Haywards Heath Town Centre Master Plan is adopted as a supplementary planning document. And my understanding is that date is set towards the end of March for that to come forward. Members, this will be a named vote, so I'm going to hand that over to Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bates.
Excuse me, I'm ever so sorry, but I thought that Councillor Eccleston made a comment that we needed to delete page 72 in the
Tom Clark said he would.
Yeah, that will be updated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Bates.
Again.
Sure.
Sorry, Councillor Bates.
Against.
Councillor Margaret Belsey.
For.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Cogunn White.
For.
Councillor DeBell.
For.
Councillor Eggleston.
For.
Councillor Hatton.
For.
Councillor Henwood.
For.
Councillor Band.
For.
Councillor Mockford. Councillor Mockford. For.
Yes.
Councillor
For.
Peacock.
Councillor Peacock, for.
Councillor Pawfer. And Councillor Webb.
For.
Chairman, I didn't see my name being called out, but I'm for it.
Thank you. I had noticed that. Have you got that, Mr. Clark?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's 12 in favour, Chairman, and 2 against.
Thank you very much. That motion is carried then. Thank you. Our next item is the Scrutiny Committee for Housing, Planning and Economic Growth, the work programme. I need to hand that over to Mr. Clark, please. Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. At the present time, there's no business for your meeting on the 17th of March, but you'll know the history of this committee. It always seems to have business.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Mockford, please.
Sorry, just I don't know what's going on. Let me.
Yeah, I think that's a lag from the vote. Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed. There are no other items of urgent business, so I'm going to actually declare the meeting closed at 1901 hours, and we're going to conclude the meeting and ask you all to remain in place so that the meeting recording can be stopped in due course. And thank you very much indeed for your kind of patience and support this evening, officers and members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman.